Hey guys, welcome to the third lesson of how I see code. In this lesson, I'm going to start working on JavaScript and specifically JavaScript variables. So what are JavaScript variables? JavaScript variables are containers for storing data values. And if we look at the example here, they have a variable called x, y, and z. We set the variable of x using the word var, x equals 5, var, y equals 6, and then var z equals x plus y. So in this case, the x stores the value of 5, the y stores the value of 6, and the z stores the value of 11 because 5 plus 6 is 11. We can create our own examples using the JavaScript REPL, and I'm going to provide you with a link to the online editor. In 2020, the usage of var has been less common in the JavaScript ecosystem, and generally now we define variables using either let or const. Let's look at the difference in the example. So in my online REPL, I'm going to define a variable called x. And then I'm going to console log out that x value. So what is returned here is undefined. So undefined means that this variable does not have a defined value. What we can do after that is set the variable x to a different value. So in this case, we could set x equal to 1. And then we'll console log out that x. Let's run it. So first comes out undefined, and the next time it comes out as 1. I didn't really explain what console.log is, but it's a tool to log out whatever information you need in your code. Let's comment this out by pressing command plus slash comment out code, and I'll put that in the top. We can also define another variable this way by just saying let x equals 1. So then I can say console.log of x. And here, if I run it, the 1 shows up here. We can redefine our variable by just setting the x to a different value. And in this case, I'm going to render a string. So I'm going to say this is a string. So in general, we define text as string and the number as a number type. So this is a string type. And in this case, this is a number type. There are some other types in JavaScript that we're going to go over, but for now, let's just worry about strings and numbers. So when I run this, it's going to say x, this is a string, but let's actually console log it out. So this right here, and run it. Perfect. First, it shows the number 1, and then we were able to redefine that value to a string. This is great, and I want to show you a different way that you could define a variable using the word const instead of let. So in this case, I'm just going to say redefine a variable using the keyword let. And let's comment this out here. The next thing we're going to do is define a variable using the keyword const. So here I'm going to say const x equals 1 again. And I'm going to console log out this x. And let's see what happens. 1 comes out. Now, similar to the let example, I'm going to try to define x equals 3. And then console log out the x here. And I run it. It says assignment to constant variable is a type error. The biggest difference between the const and the let keyword is that const does not allow you to redefine that variable. It's a constant. Let is really great if you need to redefine your variable dynamically, and there could be a myriad of possibilities of why you would need to do that. But in certain instances, you want to make sure that variable does not ever change. And in this case, const would be a great use case for this. So purely from a JavaScript perspective, I hope that this explains how variables can be defined. Let's create an example using our HTML index.html file to generate some script tags to run some JavaScript within our web browser. I took the liberty of creating the starter HTML to generate this project. And the first thing we're going to do is work on the body, create a layout, and then implement the JavaScript side. So the first thing we're going to do is create a div tag. And inside of our div tag, we're going to have 4 buttons. Each button is going to say the number 1, 2, 3, and 4 respectively. By clicking on that button, it should generate a new value to the user saying that you click number 1, you click number 2, you click number 3, or you click number 4. The tag that we're going to be using is the button tag. So we're going to open up the button tag here. And if you have any questions about the button tag, I can attach some documentation around that specific tag. What the button tag has are a couple of attributes. So in this case, I'm going to say type equals button. And here I'm just going to write number 1. I'm going to copy and paste this 4 times. And then I'm going to say 2, 3, and 4. The next thing I'm going to do is create a separate div container here. And here I'm going to say button. And in the text, I'm going to say reveal the number. And lastly, we're going to create a p tag that's self-enclosing and just say ID equals value ID. In HTML, you could definitely do self-enclosing tags, but generally there's a purpose behind why you would do that. In this case, I'm going to leverage the JavaScript and reveal the text specific to that p tag. Let's save this and run our application. I'm going to cd into my variables folder. And then open the index.html. So opening up the index.html, you can see that we have the 4 buttons, number 1, number 2, number 3, and number 4, and the reveal the number. Right now, these buttons don't actually do anything because there's no onClick handler attribute attached to it. We could definitely add the onClick handler to these button attributes, but we need some JavaScript as well. So let's go back to the code. In the code here, under the title, I'm going to create a script tag. And the script tag allows us to write JavaScript in our code. The first thing I'm going to do is define the variable called value. And I'm just going to say let value. And remember, this value right now is undefined. The next thing I'm going to do is create 2 functions. I'm going to go more in depth about what functions are, but imagine functions as triggers that are activated whenever a user interacts with your web page. So for now, I'm just going to write function change value. And I'll say num. And here I'm just going to say value equals num. So in this scenario, whatever value num is, the value will be set to that number. I'll give you a play-by-play of how this works. So when I say on click equals change value of 1. And here I'm going to say on click equals change value 2, and so forth. On click equals change value of 3. And lastly here, on click equals change value of 4. I apologize, I accidentally capitalized the click handlers here. So what happens is when a user presses the button on click, it calls this function called change value. And it takes in an argument of 1, 2, 3, or 4 respectively. When that number goes to here, this function, we're going to set the value equal to that number. Since we don't have a UI hooked up to render the value to the user, clicking on those buttons won't actually provide any good feedback, but I'll just show it to you anyways. So when we go to the web browser, clicking on these numbers don't actually do anything yet because we haven't hooked up what the reveal number function should be doing. I also realized I spelled reveal wrong, so let's get that fixed as well. So here I'm just going to say reveal the number. We'll call it type equals button. And here we'll add an onClick attribute called reveal the number. And these 2 parentheses indicate that you're calling the function. Right now we don't have the reveal number function, so let's just say function reveal number. And this one doesn't take any arguments here. So what we're going to do is use a little bit of JavaScript to say document dot get element by ID, value ID. And then we'll set the inner HTML to the value. So what this function is doing is that it's going to find the element called value ID within this document. And in this case, it's this p tag right here. it's going to take the inner HTML attribute and then set that inner HTML attribute to the value. So putting it all together, we use the change value to set the value of our number. And then we use the reveal number function to reveal the actual value to the user. Let's look at it live and see what happens. When I refresh the page, we have number 1, 2, 3, and 4, and reveal the number with the proper spelling. I'm going to click number 1 and then click reveal the number. It's 1. I'm going to click number 2 and then reveal the number. It's 2. I'm going to click number 4 and then reveal the number. It's 4. So this is how you can leverage JavaScript variables, and I hope this shows you how HTML and JavaScript can work together to create interactive web pages. In the next lesson, we're going to be going over JavaScript object types, which is another category of types that you could set to a variable. Remember, we talked about variables from the perspective of numbers and strings, but there are many different types within the JavaScript ecosystem. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments below. If you find content like this really helpful for you in your coding journey, hit a like and subscribe. Until then, talk to you later.